Attendees, please stay on as we do a transfer here. I see Simon is joining us. Hi, Simon. As we do this transition, Linda will be joining us here in a second as well. Thank you. While Linda's joining us, let me just hit a couple of announcements really quick, and then, hi, Linda, good to see you. First of all, just some I guess, announcements. Again, our lunch kind of networking will be in the Remo app. And during this panel, we'll post the link to that in the chat so that you will have that. And it's also in your Whova agenda. And I apologize, this was supposed to be integrated with Whova, but many of you were having trouble with Whova. It's one of the things with just going virtual. And since Zoom is so stable, we've kind of brought you out of that. So the links will be a little bit more difficult, but please join us in Remo. It's a chance to have a small group conversation, and Ben and Natalie and Julia and I will all be there to help you. It's also the venue that we will be using for our Super Californiistic Let's All Be Precocious trivia contest that we'll be having at later this afternoon. One thing about the trivia contest I need to talk to you guys about, there will be 5 extra points awarded for teams that include 3 or more agencies. So if you combine, and I'm just going to say, we mean regional agencies. 3 people from the different cities that happen to be from the same region, that doesn't count. It has to be different regional agencies, and I know which city goes to which region. So 5 extra points just for those of you who are super competitive. You need to be texting one another to form your teams. So there we go. I also want to call out right now one of the special sponsors that we have, Southern California Edison, who stepped up huge for us last year, stayed with us this year, and we share in common a concern and a desire to address the infrastructure issue for electric vehicles, and they have expertise. We have paired so Simon Horton is here from Southern California Edison, and is going to be sharing some of the amazing work that they've been doing in Southern California, a few lessons. And then we've also brought Linda Urata in from Kern Council of Governments. Now, when you think of Kern, you might not think of one of our leaders in electric vehicle infrastructure deployment, but they are doing amazing work. They are, and so we asked Linda to come in and kind of share. And I believe we're going to start with Simon. And Simon, I love your blurry background. That looks really cool. I'm, just strangely just want to watch you. So I'm going to turn this over to you to start. I believe we're going to be doing some slides for you. And then you're going to do a short session. Linda, you're going to go short. And we're going to have some time for questions. And to all the audience, I'm not going to ask all the questions this time. So I'm sorry that I've been doing that this morning, but we'll be monitoring and taking your questions. Simon, why don't you go?
Okay, thanks, Bill. Yeah, I go with the blurry background because I discovered that people were trying to read the names of the books on the bookshelf behind me if I left it clear. Thank you, and really happy to be presenting today. I'm not sure if that slideshow is being presented yet. Is that something that Ben is going to put up for us?
Yeah, Ben should be, or it's either Ben or Natalie. Who's on first? They will be texting me shortly. I'm sorry.
That's okay, but I'll go ahead and get started. Just following up on some of the great conversation that we just heard, Southern California Edison has really developed some very important programs that can help support much of what the Assembly member and Mr. Chin discussed. Primarily with transition to electric vehicles in the medium and heavy duty space. We're very, very active in that space with both transit, public transit, as well as goods movement, with a strong focus on goods movement from the ports out to the Inland Empire areas of Southern California. we have several different exciting programs that we're working across multiple sectors in the medium and heavy duty space, in the transit and school bus space, like I just discussed. Thank you. Yeah, if you can go to slide number 2. Yeah, medium and heavy duty, that's the goods movement, trucks and cargo handling, transit and school buses, workplace and public charging for passenger vehicles, and then a lot of exciting programs to help spur at-home charging. Next slide, please. And so I'll just quickly run through some of the programs that we currently have offered, as well as some examples of projects that are either in flight or have completed. So our flagship medium and heavy duty program is the Charge Ready Transport program. This is a $356 million program that offers, intends to electrify up to 8,500 electric vehicles throughout our service territory. There are also, in addition to all of the infrastructure being provided by Southern California Edison, there are also, for certain sectors, rebates available to help offset the cost of the actual charging equipment. And that applies primarily to transit school bus projects, as well as sites in our disadvantaged communities throughout our service territory. Next slide. So in that medium and heavy duty space, we're looking at a lot of different vehicle sectors there. You can see buses, forklifts, delivery vans. You can imagine now that we've transitioned to this work from home environment, which many work sectors will stay with once we do get through the pandemic situation. We're still going to see that a lot of people are working from home, so there will be a lot of needs for those delivery vehicles. You can imagine all the major delivery companies that are out there operating right now, and those have a tremendous impact on our environment. And so being able to help transition those to electric is going to make a huge impact. Next slide, please. So Charge Ready programs, like I said, we offer several different versions of our Charge Ready program, and I'll get into those in a couple of subsequent slides. But if you imagine working with your utility, traditionally the utility is thought of as we bring power to your meter. We are the ones that handle setting transformers and doing those distribution circuits that bring power to your meter. But with our Charge Ready programs, we can go beyond the meter. We can actually build that infrastructure on the customer side. So if you are operating a fleet of vehicles, we would actually come in and build all that infrastructure all the way out to the charging stations where the vehicles actually connect. And then your obligation as the customer participant would be just to provide those charging stations then at that infrastructure that Edison provides. It's an enormous amount of infrastructure, enormous amount of cost savings for the end user, and we're very excited about these programs. Next slide, please. So, next couple of slides we'll go through here. I'm just going to show a few examples of projects that we have recently completed. So here at the city of Porterville, we did a project where we initially did 10 200 kilowatt DC chargers for their first procurement of electric buses. So you can see here, this is during the construction process. We're putting in all of this infrastructure. This was a very substantial project. We also built it with capacity to build future projects, and we actually have a future project for the city of Porterville in the works right now. They're just finishing up the final touches on that. This type of infrastructure then saved the city the cost of all of that. So they were able to divert the funding they had for the vehicles and for future electrification efforts. Next slide, please. Here again, another transit project, this in the city of Victor Valley Transit. Here you can see in these photographs, we're making connections out at the Edison distribution facilities offsite. And then the next pictures are our crews actually doing the work within the yard to install all of the infrastructure. Victor Valley now has, I believe that we have 7 chargers at their main facility in Hesperia, and we're now in the process of building additional at their satellite facility in the city of Barstow, I believe it is. And so they were able to leverage the funding offered by Southern California Edison to do all of this infrastructure. again, much of this would have been out of scope for their budget, and it allowed them to procure additional buses. Next slide, please. Again, another transit project. I made these slides transit heavy. I thought this was appropriate for the audience here. This is at Foothill Transit. This is in the city of Arcadia. Here, very innovative project where we partnered with Foothill Transit. So the photographs there show all of the infrastructure that the Edison team designed and installed. You can see in that bus yard, it was a tremendous amount of work, really had to do some major retrofitting of the yard. And I believe on the next slide, we will see what the finished product looked like. If you can move to the next slide, please. And here it is, finished project. So Foothill Transit opted to go with an overhead gantry system to electrify their buses. So Edison did all of the in-the-ground infrastructure for this project, and then Foothill designed and built that overhead gantry system with the cord reels that extend down from above for their fleet of electric buses. So very exciting project. And again, Foothill Transit was very proactive in leveraging the Edison funding and the Edison design and construction expertise to handle a majority of this project for them. Next slide, please. Another thing that the Edison team is offering is our transportation electrification advisory services. This is a team from our business customer division that works with our customers. We have dedicated account managers, as many of you already are aware of. You know your Edison account manager, but we also have on that team a group of specialists that can help with fleet analysis, site feasibility studies, and fueling calculations and rate analyses. We've put together some really innovative tools. We have an online tool that helps do some cost evaluation for making that transition to electric vehicles. And then the second column there, the transportation electrification project management. That is the team actually that works with me. And in that scenario, when we have customers that are looking at doing their fleet electrification, we assign them a single point of contact, help them through the whole design and engineering process and through the whole maze, if you will, of getting a project from start to finish to where it's electrified. Next slide, please. Just a quick highlight of a few other programs that Edison has in flight. We have a program called Charge Ready Schools. This is an offshoot of Assembly Bill 1082. This is a $10 million program to install electric vehicle charging at schools throughout our service territory. It was available for K-12 schools. It is now a fully reserved program. We have all of the schools in the program, but I'll mention in another slide later of options for schools going forward. And then on the second column there, Charge Ready Parks, which again also is an offshoot this time of Assembly Bill 1083. A $10 million program to install EV infrastructure at state parks and beaches. We're also doing potentially doing a couple of tribal sites in this project or this program. And here we're looking at providing long dwell charging as well as some DC fast charging at park sites throughout the SCE service territory. Next slide, please. And then our big flagship light duty program, I mentioned earlier, our flagship medium and heavy duty program, but Charge Ready, we're calling it just Charge Ready. It's sort of the culmination of all the efforts we've done so far, launching a little bit later this year. This is a massive EV infrastructure program. We're looking to deploy as many as 32,000 level 2 charging ports at workplaces, apartments, destination centers, fleets, in addition to co-locating potentially as many as 200 additional DC fast chargers. We have an offer or a rebate offering for new multifamily construction. For developers that are building multifamily properties that have already a Cal Green component to install EV infrastructure, we are offering a rebate for those developers to go beyond the Cal Green limitations and get those EV capable stalls all the way to the situation where they're EV ready, so that at move-in, new tenants or new owners in those multifamily properties can begin charging immediately. We do have a small slice of the program that offers a turnkey solution for multifamily and certain government entities. And that allows Edison to actually not only build all the infrastructure, but also own and maintain the chargers. As I mentioned earlier, most of our programs, the customer owns the charger. In this scenario, we recognize there are certain customer segments where that's a challenge, either financially or logistically. And so we've got a small carve out that allows Edison to actually own and operate those chargers. And you know, the overarching piece of our Charge Ready suite of programs is bringing EV awareness and no cost infrastructure to the SCE service territory through all of these different programs. And next slide. So we're happy to have you join us on this ride. I went through that pretty quickly, so I could hopefully give some room not only for my co-presenter, but also some Q&A.
That is excellent, and I was really struck by the business services and the willing to consult on as a service that our transit agencies and maybe even us as planners. One of the questions that we've had, and I might ask you, Simon, just to throw a curve before we let Linda go. Debbie Hale from Monterey asks about EV charging in multi-unit housing, and how do you deal with that issue of ownership and condominium boards and rents? I don't know if you guys have started to address that issue yet, or Linda, if you want to jump in and tell me that you're about to cover that, that's good.
Well, I'll add a little bit there based on the presentation, the information in my slides. We do recognize that as a real challenge. And so we've created a couple of different options that can help streamline that. One is that new construction rebate, where we can actually work with developers to help them get sites ready to go and be EV capable once they are move-in ready. We also have a small carve out in our Charge Ready program for that Edison own and operate model, where Edison would actually own and operate those chargers, so that there isn't the need for an HOA or individual tenants to manage it. It would be managed by Edison. And so the actual tenants can have that capability of EV, but without having to have that ownership or structure issue to deal with who manages the building, who manages the maintenance, and so on.
That is excellent. Veronica, I see your question. We're going to get to, I want to make sure, I'm going to let Linda go right now, and then Veronica will circle back with you. Linda, we have your slides as well. Are you sharing?
Ben's going to put up my slides.
All right. You're on. Go.
All right. Well, good morning. I'm happy to be with you today. At Kern COG, our tagline is better planning, better transportation. And that includes EV readiness as one part of our efforts to provide safe and efficient transportation, as well as continuing our technology transition that will reduce negative air quality and climate change impacts from the transportation sector. Just a quick note about me, because experience is a big part of this. Prior to joining the Kern COG team in 2006, I was the executive director for a local 501c3 nonprofit, Project Clean Air, for about 14 years. And that I've served as the San Joaquin Valley Clean Cities Coordinator since 2002. And I hold that as a volunteer position today. And the Clean Cities Coalition is still hosted under Project Clean Air. There are Clean Cities coalitions across the country. It's a Department of Energy program. And 2 California coalitions are hosted in a COG, and that includes the Southern California Association of Governments and Western Riverside. Personally, I just wanted to say I related to what Laura Friedman said about her daughter walking to school. I had a daughter with asthma, and if it was winter and people were lighting fires in their fireplaces, you know, she'd be on her inhaler by the time she got to school. So it's kind of sad to see that 25 years later, we still have kids walking to school and struggling with some air quality issues. At Kern COG, I work on mobility innovations for light duty, medium duty, heavy duty vehicles, intelligent transportation systems, grant writing, grant technical support for our member agencies, which a lot goes to this EV readiness. And in my work, I touch upon transit, bicycling, transportation demand management, air quality outreach, and today's topic, electric vehicles and infrastructure. And I just wanted you to be aware of that because we are a small association of governments, probably one of the larger ones in the Central Valley. But we do have a lot on our plates, as many of your regional planners do. Many people in our agency see electrification of transportation as a path towards autonomous vehicles. And I'd just like to have you change to the next slide. Thanks. Oop, there you go. How many of you are familiar with California EnviroScreen? This is the new version, Cal EnviroScreen 4.0. They're still taking comments on it. But as you can see, California will not meet its goals for energy efficiency, electric vehicles, electric vehicle infrastructure, climate, or air quality without activating low to moderate income, diverse, and rural communities. As you can see by this slide, this is where we live and work. We have 2 air districts. We have the San Joaquin Valley and Eastern Kern, and our region consistently and persistently has the worst air quality in the country. The Valley has some of the most generous incentives for EVs in California. We have both in Kern County, we have PG&E, Southern California Edison, and Southern California Gas. So we have, depending on where you live, different incentive programs available to us. But all of these generous incentives do still require private and public investments in a new technology, or what's seen as a new technology. And in brief, there are numerous obstacles to EV and EV infrastructure deployment in Kern County, with some improvement from where we got started on this effort in 2012. There's a lack of private investment by the EV charging industry. That's changed in the last year or so. Technology, until recently, does not provide the best choice for the best price. Think range anxiety. Think ag and energy production needs for pickup trucks. Used EVs have reduced range and expensive battery replacement. So that's limits using used EVs in the low-income communities. The lack of infrastructure and long distances between communities, long commutes may mean having to plan your trips, and most people are used to just jumping in their car and going where they want to go. Those who rent their homes have limited home charging options, and more often than not, no workplace charging. Lack of access to loans, tax credits for moderate or low-income sectors of the population is a barrier. Our dealerships lack inventory to begin with, and some people still see it as being unfaithful to the energy industry to buy an electric vehicle, and awareness has to be multilingual. Next slide. Sometimes I think that collaboration slide is what it looks like inside my head, but it does take a lot of experience and a variety of partners, which I find all of them to be very inspirational. Naturally, we have our 12 member agencies at Kern COG. And then, as I mentioned, I've been working in the alt fuel vehicle and fueling sector for about 28 years now. And in 2012, the San Joaquin Valley Clean Cities Coalition partnered with the Kern Community College District. These are the logos down the left side. The San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, the California State University Fresno Office of Economic and Community Development, which was overseeing the California Partnership for the San Joaquin Valley, and the San Joaquin Valley Clean Energy Organization. So we were one of 5 groups that received a California Energy Commission grant on workforce development called the Regional Industry Clusters of Opportunity. And out of that effort came the San Joaquin Valley Electric Vehicle Partnership and the San Joaquin Valley Natural Gas Partnership, and those were established in 2013. So these 2 industry-led partnerships continue to work actively today. The EV partnership is led by an industry rep, Bill Williams, who's heading up the market expansion for the Nissan Leaf battery that's made in Tennessee, but he lives and works here in California. Prior to that, when he came to us, he worked for a charging station company called Connectronics. And then after that, he was the national sales director for Proterra. So we've also had people representing Nissan North America, EVgo, some really great people and inspirational people and very knowledgeable people have been part of this partnership and leading the partnership. In addition to the original partners, we still have others who represent EVgo, EVbox, Morgan Olson, a vehicle company. Connectronics EV Perks is an online platform for giving perks to EV riders. Green Riteros, they're another electric car share program in the Valley. And CalStart and many others in the vehicle and infrastructure industries, as well as individuals interested in improving air quality. So it's not KernCog alone, it's certainly a collaborative effort. Next slide. In 2018, the California Energy Commission issued a solicitation for EV-ready communities, Blueprint Phase 1. 9 proposals would be selected, 3 for each region, North, Central, and South, to prepare a blueprint. In Phase 2, those 9 would be eligible to compete for funding to implement their blueprint. So KernCog became engaged because we were interested in going for Phase 2 funding. We were successful with our grant application, and we partnered with the Center for Sustainable Energy on this project. We had 2 project goals. The first was to develop a blueprint to accelerate the transition to electrified transportation while considering the challenges in disadvantaged communities and supporting the state of California's 2015 or 2016 by the plan, action plan goal of 1.5 million ZEVs on California roads by 2025. And a quick note about that, as we were progressing through this, and as you'll see, in the Central Valley, we're finding that even the allocations through the EV Pro tool that was released by the state, they saw most of the electrification of transportation being driven to basically 5 larger communities like San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Jose, Sacramento. And so they weren't seeing or envisioning the growth of electric vehicles happening in the San Joaquin Valley, even though we persistently have the worst air quality. The second goal for us for this blueprint was to identify 12 shovel-ready sites with 1 in each KernCog member agency jurisdiction, and to position those for California Energy Commission Phase 2 or other funding. I called on past and present partners to serve on the advisory committee. We took items to KernCog's technical advisory committees, both transportation and regional planners, throughout the process. And they had input, for instance, when we were selecting those 12 high impact areas. And the plan development itself occurred over a 7-month period, which was followed by a 2-month draft and final approval process. So next slide. Implementation, let's go. The center of a lot of this is grants, you'll see. KernCog began blueprint implementation right away. It was mostly a continuation of our previous efforts with the Clean Cities Coalition and the EV Partnership, as well as work we've been doing with our member agencies to identify charging station locations. A lot of the work that we do is with grant writing and helping people apply for incentives and hosting workshops and sending emails about funding availability, funding opportunities. When the state released its, the California Energy Commission funds a program called CALEVIP, and they set aside $5 million for Kern County. And that funding was released in December of 2020. So when that happened, you'll see the conference room. That's not our conference room, but it's similar. And we set up kind of a war room with some of our partners. We invited in the infrastructure community. ChargePoint took us up on it. Turnkey Energy, they install solar and charging stations together throughout the San Joaquin Valley. And they set up shop in our war room, so to speak, and we turned in more than 250 applications the next day to help fund electrification in Kern County. Most of our applicants, however, are still waiting or just beginning to deploy their projects. It's been kind of a slow going process for that funding. California City, another one of our cities, just applied for a grant from the East Kern Air Pollution Control District. McFarland will use matching funds from CMAQ. So to get any one project done, we're having to stitch together funding. Most of our agencies, being disadvantaged communities, do not have funding for match. And so we have to come up with creative solutions. These blueprints that we showed you on the last page were adopted in June 2019. Finally, in the fall, They offered their phase 2 implementation with our grants being submitted in October of 2020. Those announcements were made in 2021 and our agreements in April, which is about 22 months after our plan adoption. So we're competed for 2.5 million. We were lucky that Sacramento's only asking for 1.8 million. And so with our $700,000, we had to scale back our proposal. We originally wanted to do charging stations, workforce development, electric car sharing, public outreach, but now we'll be using the $700,000 to set up charging stations with 6 of our member agencies, and then 1 set at Bakersfield College to support their automotive technology program to train vehicle technicians as well as infrastructure technicians. In March, getting ready for the agreement, the CEC surprised us with a requirement that's brought about by AB 841. Electricians that install charging stations beginning next year are going to have to be certified by EVITP. It's an electric vehicle infrastructure training program. It's evitp.org. So we quick scrambled, and they have 1 set of classes coming up in April online with a certification exam scheduled in Los Angeles in May. And some of our projects are ready to turn dirt in April. So it was, behooved us to quickly put this together. And we were able to work with a statewide director for the community colleges, with EVITP, and with our Valley Air District. So now we are offering that class online. People can apply, the electricians can apply for a grant and attend that class for free. And with reimbursement from the Valley Air District. And they're offering a technician certification in Bakersfield. Instead of people having to travel all the way from, say, Stockton down to Los Angeles, we cannot reimburse through the Air District funding for travel to Bakersfield, but at least the class fee will be free. But that just gives you an example of how these partnerships come into bear, that within a week we were able to put that together, which was in fact last week. So next slide. Evaluations and milestones. As you all know, as planners, with any plan you have milestones, strategies, goals that you need to follow. Every other month or so, about once a quarter, I count using alt fuel database, the alt fuel data centers station locator. We use PlugShare. We use all kinds of things to take a look at where we have charging stations in Kern County, and we count those. We're at 657 charging spaces that I can count. And that's a 55.3% increase from our baseline of 423 charging spaces in July of 2016, which is when we started counting. But we're right on track with where we projected we would be in that blueprint. Before the blueprint development in 2016, the city of Arvin's barriers to EV charging included no budget, no ability to match funds, a lack of EV owners or drivers in the community, EV technology still considered new, and a lack of power that required a transformer upgrade with utility providers. In 2016, their solutions included layering grants and incentives, which is also part of what I do at KernCog. We have a grant finder software program. I put on grant workshops. We announce funding opportunities. So I've worked with the city of Arvin and their grant writer to help move this forward.
Linda,
yes?
Assume that this is my time card and you've got like 2 minutes, okay?
Okay, I'm almost done, actually. So they layered grants and they built infrastructure. You can see there's solar on top of their transit center. Those are charging stations in their parking lot. And then we also used the EV Go Stub Up program to put in charging stations. Their grant writer wrote the only FTA Low-No federal grant awarded in California that year, which led to the purchase of a Proterra Catalyst bus. And Christine continues to see barriers as opportunities. Next slide. So where should public agencies focus their efforts? One of the things we always tell anybody looking to do a project is to call their utility first. A lot of times they think that hooking it up to the electric system is the last thing they need to think about. But in reality, calling your utility is the first thing that you should think about. And I see Simon nodding his head, but I can't say that enough. And I can tell you from experience, I'm the broken wheel, but they still do not listen to that advice. So the more we can get that information out there, call your utility first. That's the best thing to do. These are just some of the efforts that we've done at KernCog. We have had a Best Drive Ever campaign on radio, television, and Spectrum Digital Media. We put on an annual Transitions Transit Symposium. This has been about our third or fourth year. This year we went online, just specifically for the Transit Center. The picture to the right is our solar curriculum for junior high school and high school teachers, and then we give them the materials to work in the class. We do first responder training. We've worked with electric school buses, and this is the Tehachapi Apple Festival, where on the other side of the street from us, they had antique cars, and on our side, they could do a ride and drive with 8 car places. There was information about incentives, and one of those tents, those white tents, actually is Southern California Edison that shows up as part of our project. Next slide. So that's my presentation to you for the day. I want to thank Bill Higgins for inviting me and supporting our efforts. One of those pictures I missed was MeoCar, so I know Bill had some questions about MeoCar, and I'm happy to answer that. The only note I would add to that is when we did that, it was a result of a study, and it was meant to be last mile transit with the idea that our dial-a-rides could park a bus, and then that funding would go to sustain the operations. Right now, though, MeoCar is just a car sharing platform. We're hoping in the next year, we're working towards having it be more of a transportation network like your Lyft or Uber service as well. So people would have access to the car and then be able to drive the car, filling that role of last mile transit. So that's my answer on MeoCar there.
Well, that's good. And I know that we'll have Rosa Park from Stanislaus tomorrow, and I'm betting that she talks a little bit about it as well. Simon, I might ask you, I mean, part of the why we wanted to have this session was to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of infrastructure and it's instead of the glossy presentation. But I might ask you to reflect a little bit on what Linda is doing and saying in terms of how that works and what we all should be doing.
Well, yeah, Linda's spot on with engage your utility early. That is key. We want to be a partner, and we are a partner in this. Not only do we have lots of very innovative funding opportunities, we also have a lot of design expertise. Our team members are aware of the external funding sources and grants and so on. And we have good awareness on how to pair that with the infrastructure costs. We would like to be involved in the planning of your projects, regardless of whether you're using one of our programs or just going a traditional route, because we can help design our system to be able to manage your needs, not only the immediate needs, but what that long-term growth looks like. You may just be dipping your toe in the water for your EV transition, but we want to help you make smart decisions so that the infrastructure you build can help serve your needs as your fleets make a full transition.
And let me ask you a slightly different question. I'm going to ask you to step out of your geography for a second, because we have people from all over the state. And, you know, right now they're probably wishing that Southern California was also Northern California Edison. But how can you work with the SMUD and the other utilities? Do they all have similar programs? Of course, not as good as yours, but similar programs that they can work with and do some of the same things.
Well, so our large sister utilities in the state have similar programs to ours. They're not structured exactly the same, but they do have similar funding mechanisms. But I think the key there is really that early engagement. All of the utilities throughout the state want to partner with the groups that are doing these electrification projects. It's in our best interest because we can make smart decisions with our circuit developments and our upgrades throughout our systems. We don't want to be the afterthought in the process, because that we then have to deliver the bad news that, oh, you need an upgrade that takes some time. If we can be the early early participant, then we can get those upgrades done in parallel with your planning so that we're all hitting the finish line at the same time. And I think that applies to any of the utilities, whether they be one of the large IOUs or a smaller municipal utility.
Well, and I know I'm hearing the collective growling of stomachs out there, so which is always my Linda, really quick, how many electric stations are EV charging stations are you working on planning across the county? Just if you had to pick a number.
Well, our goal is to get from our 657 spaces where we are now up to roughly 4,000 spaces to support that 1.5 million vehicle goal. So that's our short answer goal. Well,
that's good. One thing I think, more, and we don't have time to get into it now, but there's certainly probably also a gap analysis going. I mean, right, where to go. I mean, we know that 80% of people, I think I have this number right, about 80% of the people are charging at their homes, right? Mm-hmm. Simon, is that about right?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just make sure that was almost a trivia question, but it didn't quite make it. But we still need to have the institute in place, the facilities in place to allow people to get to and use where they need to go. You're going to be at lunch, both of you, or at least I think Simon's going to be at our lunch, and I know Hag is going to be at our lunch. There is going to be some drawings at the lunch networking as well. The Remo contact is in in the chat room. It's also in WUVA. We invite you to come in, just so you know, when you enter the Remo room, you'll be presented with a map of tables, and you just click a chair and you'll be at that table and just talking with the people at that table. So, and if you get tired of those people at the table, just click another table and that's where you'll go. Simon, Linda, thank you so much for sharing this. This is definitely an area that we all need to get more involved in, particularly with the state goals. We're all going to have to figure this out. So we appreciate you. Work with your utility early, get planning grants, and do the community work. That's the lesson I'm taking from here. Anything I missed?
Early.
I'm sorry.
Transformers are expensive. You need their help and input. So yes, early for transformer help especially.
All right. For the rest of you, we'll have the Remo lunch, and then at 1:30 we're going to come back and have our equity session. We'll be talking about what and how we should be addressing the issue of racial equity, and I think that's going to be a deep, meaningful conversation. We're going to be using Zoom rooms and breakouts, and it'll be much more interactive than our morning. So thank you all. We're about to close this out, and we'll look forward to seeing you either at lunch or at 1:30. Thank you again, Simon and Linda.
Thank you.